Hello, everybody, and welcome to this SAP Litmos webinar, Customer Connections, How Aussie Broadband Delivers Online Training for a Diverse Audience. We'll be starting this webinar in about 1 minute. We just want to accommodate any latecomers. Wonderful. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this SAP Litmos webinar, Customer Connections, How Aussie Broadband Delivers Online Training for a Diverse Audience. My name is John Hilton, and I'm the News Editor of HRD Australia. Well, today's discussion involves a virtual fireside chat with Aussie Broadband to discover their journey of strategizing, launching, and implementing their latest training program across their business. In this webinar, you will learn the key elements of Aussie Broadband's training program, how they are using training to engage their diverse workforce, and how SAP Litmos has assisted them to meet their training goals. Today's speakers include Lisa Anderson, Solutions Manager at SAP Litmos, and Claire Morrissey, Learning and Development Officer at Aussie Broadband. Throughout the webinar, feel free to send through any questions you have using the online Q&A function. Feel free to send those through at any time at all, and we'll get to those at the end. But for now, we'll start by handing it over to Lisa Anderson. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that, John. So hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Lisa Anderson. I'm with SAP Litmos, and I'm based out of our Melbourne office. My role at Litmos, just to give you a little bit of background, I work with new clients that are onboarding into onto the LMS, and also work with existing customers as well. And I've got Claire with me as well to join us for a chat. So what I might do, Claire, is perhaps if I just hand over to you to give the guys a little bit more of an idea on your role, and then we'll run through an introduction of what we're going to cover off today.
Sure, sounds good. Good morning, everyone. I'm Claire, and as Lisa said, and I'm from Aussie Broadband. I'm our Learning and Development Officer there. So Aussie Broadband, for a bit of context, we are a telecommunications service provider, and our head office is in the Latrobe Valley, so Gippsland in Victoria. We have about 450 staff, and at the moment I am the only learning and development specialist that we have on site.
Excellent. Holding the fort. Okay. So look, today what we'd like to cover off over the next sort of 30 to 45 minutes or so, we'll get to know Aussie Broadband a little bit better, understanding why they needed an LMS, have a talk through their training strategy, and get an idea of where Litmos fits into that puzzle, and also just talk through how they engage their learners and what they're doing to support their employees. And then we'll finish up towards the end with regards to looking forward and getting an idea on what might be next for Aussie. So I guess before we formally begin, I do want to also thank HRD for having us. Pleasure to be here. Now, as I mentioned, I am in Melbourne. So for those that are on the line, you'll know it's a little chilly here today. So hopefully everyone's had a chance to grab a cup of tea or coffee, and you're ready to sit back and learn a little bit more about Aussie Broadband. So let's get started. Now, Claire, you did tell us a little bit about Aussie Broadband and what's involved. As you mentioned, Australian-owned telecommunications company, and I think it's probably a brand that a lot of people are familiar with, but I'm curious to understand, I guess, a little bit more, Claire, about what makes Aussie tick. You mentioned 450 workers. Are they predominantly employees, contractors? Are they office-based? Or could you just give us a flavour of how the employee demographics look?
Sure. So we actually don't really have any contractors. All of our staff are employees of the company. So we have two main offices. Our head office, which is the original office, is in Morwell in the Latrobe Valley. And we also have another newer office, which opened up about 12 months ago now, in Lynbrook, which is in the outer suburbs of Melbourne. So Aussie Broadband has been around since 2003. It started as a very small internet service provider to connect rural people who wouldn't have otherwise been able to connect to the internet to make sure that they had those services that all other Australians can access. And then it's changed quite a bit since that time. Obviously, it's a little bit bigger than then. And about 4 years ago, they made quite a big decision to connect to the NBN, to connect to all 121 points of interconnect around Australia. So very few smaller internet service providers have done that, and it's allowed Aussie Broadband to expand quite rapidly. And we have a real ethos of providing excellent customer service. And we're also quite unique in that we're all Australian based. So the vast majority of our 450 staff members are part of our various call centre teams. Most other telecommunications providers have overseas call centres. So for us, everyone is in the office normally, but at the moment, about half of our staff are working remotely, which has been a new challenge that everyone's got at the moment, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the same over at Litmos, that's for sure. So interestingly, when you mentioned the original target market was people sort of in more far-reaching geographic locations, is that one of the reasons, do you think, why Aussie have chosen to set up camp in, say, Glenbrook or a little bit outer, as opposed to choosing like a CBD location?
I think so, yes. So the leadership team of Aussie are very, they're really passionate about providing opportunities in rural and regional locations. All of our, the majority of our leadership team do actually live in regional areas themselves.
Okay.
And so I think it's just something that we're really passionate about, providing jobs and opportunities in places where these sorts of roles aren't as common.
Yeah, excellent. I guess it's a little bit of practice what you preach. So that sounds fantastic. Now, I know previously we've had a little chat about this, and I'm interested to talk about this today with the group. Now, I know, look, most companies, they've got their own core values and guiding principles. Can you tell us a little bit more about the core values at Aussie, and I guess how they actually translate for you in a day-to-day perspective?
Sure. So our core values, we actually have two sort of sets of things. We have our why, which is that we're in the business to change the game in the telecommunications industry, and also to change the game in how we relate to our staff and to our communities as a whole. And that philosophy underpins everything that happens at Aussie Broadband. And on top of that why sits the 5 core values. So the 5 core values are everywhere at Aussie. If you could see my video, you'd see that they're literally on the wall behind me. So they are: don't be ordinary, be awesome. Think big, no BS, be good to people, and have fun. They're a little bit unusual as values go. They're quite plainly put, and they were developed by the staff members who were here at the time when they were developed. So they are quite important to us. It's something that they're very clear, tangible goals that people can see themselves in. And the values don't just live on the wall, though they are literally on our walls everywhere here. Every decision that's made in Aussie Broadband, from who we hire, how we onboard people, what things happen. I know the leadership team use them in making big decisions. Everything comes back to our why and those 5 core values.
Excellent. Thanks for that. I think having that additional context of the company and knowing that it's such a true values-based company, it really helps to sort of provide that, I guess, context and understand what makes Aussie tick really behind the scenes, which is really good. Now, I'm interested to understand next why Aussie needed an LMS. Just with regards to, I mean, look, there's plenty of organisations out there that don't have an LMS and maybe considering investing one. So I guess this next question is almost 2 parts. What would you say was some of the main drivers that led yourself and the team at Aussie that you needed an LMS to start with? And then also in particular, what was some of the reasons that you chose Litmos to fulfill that need?
Yeah, so I mentioned before that we've had quite a rapid change since we connected to all 121 points of interconnect about 4 years ago. And that's involved, the company has expanded a huge amount. So 4 years ago, there were about 60 staff members, and now we have 450. When I joined the company in October of 2018, they were about 150 staff. And it was a real tipping point for the company in terms of it no longer being a small family business and growing into quite a large business where there's a lot more people to be managing, people to be keeping track of. And also at the same time, there are a number of regulatory requirements coming in through things like the Telecommunications Consumer Protection Code, and also just making sure that we were keeping up with things like OH&S regulations. So the learning and development function sort of came in as a result of staff were asking for training, but the LMS is a key part of underpinning that training in that. So it's quite cool really that they decided to employ a learning and development officer because staff said we need more training. And the first thing that we looked at when I joined the company was to get an LMS, because we realised that we wouldn't be able to do those compliance trainings, and also to have sort of more opportunities for staff to do training in their own way, when at a time that suits them, the sort of training that suited them, and if we didn't have an online learning system. The majority of our staff take calls, so they're on call queues. They might spend a lot of time on the phone, so sometimes getting people into classroom training can be a real challenge. Yeah. So that's why we really went towards an LMS, because we know that we can find little snippets of time in people's day to put them into some training through that's online, but it might not be at the time that we expected, depending on what the call queues are doing, depending on where people are. And so having that really flexible option that can be accessed any time, you know, whether you're on a shift that finishes at midnight or whatever, has been really important for us. The reason that we chose Litmos, we looked at quite a few different options, and we brought it back to our core values. And we realised that Litmos was going to be the option that suited our values the best. So particularly when we looked at the have fun and the don't be ordinary, be awesome values, we realised that Litmos, I guess it was more fun, particularly the content library. We chose Litmos effectively for the Litmos Heroes content library, because we didn't want boring e-learning training. We wanted people to get excited about training and see it as a fantastic thing that they could get involved with, really.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. And you mentioned with that Litmos Heroes, so it's the off-the-shelf content library that we offer at Litmos. Do you also create a lot of your own in-house from a professional development perspective, or because you're using Litmos Heroes, does that, I guess, maybe free you up a little bit to focus on sort of training stuff that's really Aussie specific?
Well, we've only had an LMS for about 12 months now, so we're still working on developing some of our own content. Obviously, there's some things that are quite industry specific, which we can't get through the Heroes range. The Heroes range has been really good for us for things like quite generic topics, you know, leadership topics. The sales team use it quite a lot, especially the inbound sales team when call queues are a little bit quieter. They spend a lot of a lot of time looking at different sales things. But there are certainly some things that are very industry specific, which we've needed to create ourselves. So far, we've only created about 25 e-learning modules ourselves, but we're growing that catalogue at the moment, working on new different things.
Yeah, and I'm interested as well, you mentioned there that listening to the employees was a big driver, you know, knowing that you needed an LMS. Out of curiosity, was there do you engage in a formal engagement survey, or was it more that sort of the senior leadership team have such a close relationship with employees that was just anecdotally coming through?
Yeah, so good question. We each year we do the Great Place to Work survey, and that was some clear feedback that came through as part of that survey for a couple of years, that people were really looking for more training opportunities.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, I guess thinking of people, some of the people on the call today, some might be using Litmos, some may not. Can I ask just personally with regards to how you find using it sort of at a high level? Is it just from that engagement and using heroes that it's relatively easy to use, just out of interest for people on the call, how you're finding it?
I think it's been really good for us in terms of compliance, because we do have some compliance big requirements that we could get fined thousands and thousands of dollars if we don't meet. And having Litmos there and being able to track that people have done it and see that we've assigned it to the right people has just made, well, my life and everybody else's life so much easier. Having that there, I guess compliance is a necessary evil you kind of look at, that it's not where I want to spend most of my time as a learning and development person. And it's not what I want people to think about when they think of learning and development. So having that capability to just have it done and not have to worry about it leaves us open to be able to focus on the things that we really care about.
Yep.
And I think Litmos has really made that happen for us. The reporting there has, for compliance in particular, has been really helpful.
Yeah.
Really helpful.
Excellent. Now we've got an idea why we needed an LMS, and we've learned a little bit more about Aussie. Next, I'd sort of like to just talk through a little bit about the employee life cycle. So just to get an idea of the training strategy and understanding, I guess, what a new starter can expect when they join the team. Because I think if we get an idea of sort of the workflow here, forecasting to my next question, we'll be sort of getting an idea of how Litmos fits into the puzzle. But for a moment, I'd love to just maybe have you walk us through this life cycle and I guess sort of the thinking behind it, and I guess how the values and everything sort of come together to influence that, I guess, first 6-month journey with Aussie.
Yeah, so this map that's on here, we actually only shared with staff a couple of weeks ago. The majority of stuff on it is already happening, but some of it is still in development or about to happen as well. So basically, when a new staff member comes in, we've developed what's called the core training program. And it's quite modular. We use learning paths in Litmos to make that happen. So for example, every person that starts on their first day will be assigned the Aussie 101 core. If they're in our customer service team, then they'd be assigned a customer service core and say a technology core. And anybody who is customer facing, for example, will get a customer care core. And each core is a learning path in Litmos. Some teams use a blended approach as well. So for example, sales do an awful lot of classroom training, and so they don't have as many core training learning paths in Litmos themselves. So the core training program takes them across the first 6 months on the job. We've mapped out where we would expect our staff members to be in terms of their skills, competency by the end of 6 months on the job. And then we've taken it back to at what stage across those 6 months would we expect them to be confident in different aspects of the job role. That's where the core training is really good. So at the moment we have these modular different learning paths that people do, as well as we have a really strong buddying program. So the first day on the job, we don't put people into classroom training. They'd be out on the floor listening to calls and hearing what other consultants are doing. They spend time with lots of different consultants so that they can see what's happening. And then they get touch points as well with the online training or with classroom training as needed. The plan is, so this is a little bit in development, this bit, we've had some consultants to do up some really cool trivia games for us, and we'll run them at about once a month throughout the first 6 months to check that people are at the stage that we'd expect them to be at by that point. and see if there are any gaps in their knowledge that we need to address at that stage. So that's really going to be really key for our team leaders to track people's progress and see if they're going to be fine or if we need to put any learning interventions in early on. At the end of the 6 months, they'll do I guess an exam, but we've actually themed it as a game show. We've managed to convince our general manager of customer service to be the host of Kev's quiz. So we bought him a disgusting gold sequin jacket off.
I think we might have a picture of that a bit later on. Looking forward to having a look.
That he was very keen to wear and be the quiz show host. So that's really exciting because we wanted to test that people were at the right not stage and give them that sense of achievement by doing this test, but we didn't want to make it scary either, because an awful lot of our staff members probably haven't had a very positive experience with formal education in the past, and we want to make learning something that they want to do. Now that's on the left-hand side of that map. On the right-hand side is the probationary yarn conversation. So our yarn is basically our performance conversation, it's what we call it. So a yarn, we have this concept in our HR team of treating staff like adults rather than children. So staff get to choose how often they would like to have a yarn conversation, whether it's every 6 months, 12 months or 3 months. But we do make sure that they have a yarn during their probation to see how they're settling in, see what their career goals are, all of those sorts of things. That pretty much takes us through to the end of the 6 months on the job. And after that point, there's lots of other opportunities. In fact, there's quite a number of them that they'd be able to access during their 6 months, but everything down the bottom are sort of the opportunities that we would see people can take to specialise, get upskill, lots of different things like that, because ultimately we have a goal that we want to develop our own best people.
Yeah.
So that's where that all comes in.
Loving it. And I think I really, what appeals to me as well is the sense of, I guess, fun and even the language being used, in that you're able to achieve still really formal L&D strategic goals, but it's not, I can imagine, particularly for a workforce that maybe, hasn't had a good experience with training, it's not overwhelming. Like, you're still using words that they're familiar with, as far as having a yarn or a quiz show and those sorts of things that kind of, I guess, simple concepts, but I'd imagine really effective. And sometimes we might take for granted what a difference that could actually make of, I guess, getting learners into that mind space of going, hey, this is okay. It's a safe environment, I guess, for a lack of a better term. Come on in, have a bit of fun. You'll learn some stuff. And then I guess from an organisational perspective as well, you're still able to track and report on how they're doing as well. So yeah,
Thanks. Well, that's the goal anyway. I mean, we've still got the trivia games that we're still working on, and we've got the template for Kev's quiz show, but we haven't released it yet. We've still got to put the questions in, so I'm working with the teams at the moment to get those questions done. So it'll be very exciting to see what happens with that.
I can't wait. Now, so the next sort of question, I guess, now that we've got a really good idea of what new starters can expect, next I sort of wanted to have a little chat about, I've called them building blocks here for lack of a better term, but almost like pieces of the puzzle. Now I know that I've got Glados up there, which I don't think we formally introduced Glados yet, which is, I believe, your name for Litmos. As far as being one piece of the puzzle here, we've also got obviously the culture that we've talked a little about, that a really learner-centric approach and that sort of core fundamental training that sort of lies underneath it all. Can we talk a little bit about, I guess, the role that Litmos plays in achieving that strategy? Do you use it like predominantly to achieve those goals, or you do a lot of training outside of Litmos as well, just to get, I guess, give the people an idea of the role that Glados plays at Aussie? Yes,
so Glados is, like Lisa said, our name for Litmos. So it was voted, it was staff survey. So Glados is actually a video game character. She's an AI that, she's actually quite murderous, takes over a company, kills everyone in the video game portal. So that probably gives you a little bit of an indicator about our our staff and what they're interested in and that sort of thing. We've got being a tech company, we do have a lot of people who are interested in that sort of thing. So Glados is really key, especially during that first 6 months on the job. I think that there's a lot of potential with it that we haven't explored yet. Like I said, we've only been doing this for about 12 months now, having an LMS. And we're starting to, we've also got all of the Litmos Heroes range, and we've brought in a few extra things, for example, the SBS Cultural Competence Program. And we've packaged that up along with a few other courses like some disability awareness training through Scope, and there's some really fantastic training that came out through Learning Seat by Litmos this year, which we've packaged up together to form I guess, diversity and inclusion learning part. So that one's something that is, it's really important to us to have that available to staff, but it's not compulsory. Mm-hmm. So we encourage all staff to engage with those, and we actually have had a really high take up of doing that training. We've also we have the content library, which is available to all staff, and we have some learning paths for leaders and aspiring leaders. For example, we've got little employment law 5-minute modules that our mid-tier leaders can access. If they're going into a performance conversation with someone, they can just check in with it. I think that we do still have quite a lot of work to do in marketing all of that and helping people see that we can use Glados for things more than just compliance and just more than just the things that we have to use it for. So I've gone back to uni this semester. I'm doing a subject around designing spaces for learning. So I'm starting a project at the moment through uni, looking at other ways that we can make this a more innovative learning environment. So I guess we watch this space with that one, but that's what we're using up to now.
Excellent. And I know we've sort of talked offline a little bit, but sort of post this webinar as far as maybe having a bit of a catch up, sort of if I put my solutions hat on with regards to my role at Litmos, perhaps with yourself and your account manager, and just talking through maybe some of the features that Litmos has or we're looking to bring in that might sort of align with some of the goals that you're trying to achieve there, particularly around sort of one thing that comes to mind, the idea of the gamification, earning points and badges, the more learning that you're doing, we're sort of expanding into that territory a little bit more as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting times ahead.
Absolutely. We've actually had our graphic designer has done us up some fantastic badges that are all kind of portal themed to go with Glados's name. But we haven't used them yet. So we really need to do that. I'd love to see us using points, leaderboards, really bringing that slight, healthy competition into learning. I think that would be really fantastic.
Excellent. Now, we do actually have a few questions coming through, and we'll certainly run through them at the end. A lot of it's sort of around the content, but I thought I'd just pause for a moment and let everyone know. If you do have any Q&A, please just pop them in the chat. We'll certainly run through them towards the end of the session. I shouldn't actually look at them while I'm talking. I'll get distracted. So the next sort of area that I'm absolutely love, and I think it's brilliant, is just with regards to, I guess, a key theme that we've been talking about and hearing a lot today is Aussie's commitment to engaging your learners and finding innovative ways. Kev's quiz is going to be a popular one. So I guess I'm just interested to have a little chat. I mean, to show the group what that's about, but I guess also maybe other ways of things that you found work well, but also interestingly things that you found maybe haven't worked as well. I guess just lessons learned on that with regards to engaging your learner group.
Yep, I guess I thought that we'd launch it and everyone would be excited right from the get-go to do learning, which was a bit naive of me, to be honest, because turns out you need to teach people how to learn as well, including for online learning. So I think that's quite a big process. We've definitely come a long way over the last 18 months. 18 months ago, we basically didn't have classroom training happening. We didn't have any online learning at all. So to really have brought it to where we are is a big step, but we still have a long way to go in making, I guess we're part way along our journey to being a true learning organisation, but we're not there yet. Things that haven't worked, things that have worked, we've just started this month a series of face-to-face workshops, though we run them via WebEx because so many people are off site at the moment. And we're calling them the Game Changer Toolkit workshops. So we're running 3 or 4 of them a month, and including things like this month we had someone talk about how to fill out your taxes. Next month we're going to be talking about mortgages, because everybody's talking about mortgages in the lunchroom at the moment. It just seems to be the real.
Okay.
So the plan is to bring some life skills stuff into it and help people to see that that's part of learning too. And I'm hoping that we can start to build in some more, I guess, learning campaigns around bringing into the online learning with that. I think I've also realised that some of the learning paths, I've found out that any time that I assign something to people, they think that they have to do it, which I've kind of let happen when it came to the diversity and inclusion modules, because I thought, well, it doesn't really bother me if they think that it's compulsory.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think I need to work on how we make people realise what is necessary and what's additional, and also around educating managers on how many things to assign to people. Because you could have a flood from one manager and it seems quite overwhelming to the learners, or you could have nothing and they don't ever log into the LMS at all. So I think we really need to find a bit of a balance with that, and I think that we've got to work on that a bit more. I've also found some of the reporting a bit challenging to work out. It honestly wasn't what I thought about when I first was looking for an LMS. And it should have been. I should have thought harder about reporting capabilities and what I needed to report on, because it just wasn't something that the leadership team was so interested in at that stage. But now they're wanting monthly reports on things like what are different teams doing and different things like that. And so I really should have looked into that more, I think, because I've still got some learning to do around how that all works in Litmos.
Yep. Yeah. And I must admit, working with a lot of companies as well, similar situations, perhaps they've had the LMS for sort of 12, 24 months. And it's amazing how once there's a sense of, oh, you've got the data there, that people coming out of the woodwork going, oh, can you tell me month on month? Or like there's a demand once they see that that's available. And I must admit, when I on the other side of the fence in a lifetime ago when I was working in L&D, I took that for granted myself as well, actually, going and then also I guess it's just around that, as you mentioned, engaging your leadership group and finding that balance between we don't want them to just have a big stick and just say, hey, you've got to do it, because people will just start to resent that. But on the flip side, you also don't want to overwhelm people. So just, I guess, finding that that beautiful balance where managers are there to sort of enable and support the message that you're delivering. So yes, interesting times ahead, that's for sure. But it's really interesting, I think, with that sort of next phase, and it's probably quite a common approach for the customers that I work with, that sort of first 12 months, getting a few of the foundation programs up and running and launched, and then sort of moving into the more mature space, sort of in that second year of going, right, how do we really make this work? What can we automate? And how do we start to get, real value? So you can focus on the stuff that you need to, like creating content, engaging your managers, those sorts of things. Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. And it turns out creating content takes a really long time. It's really expensive if you outsource it.
That it does. It's one of a very common question I get with new starters, and they talk about, what should we think about timeframes for setting up a new LMS? And often my first question is, do you have content? No? Okay, well, regardless of what LMS you choose, start focusing on your content, because once you open that Pandora's box, it can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes, but it's just got to get stuck in, really.
Yes, definitely.
And I know we have actually had a few questions around content just with regards to designing it in-house versus engaging externally. So given we're almost coming to the end of our chat, just flagging for those that have asked questions, we'll certainly cover that off in a moment.
And one quick thing that did remind me of is when we were looking to get Litmos, I knew that you could develop content in Litmos. I think I thought that was going to be a one-size-fits-all. It was going to be a fantastic program. In reality, I found that creating programs within Litmos, it's been really good for some of our team leaders to be able to do quizzes, little surveys, that sort of thing. But I did find if you're looking to develop content, you need an external authoring tool that's more flexible.
Yeah,
as well.
Got you. And while I promise that this is a Litmos spruiking session, interestingly, we do actually have an authoring tool on our product roadmap for 2020. So that's some exciting times ahead as well. So before we get stuck into the content, really where I guess I just wanted to finish off with the chat was just to get an idea of what's next for Aussie. I know we've sort of talked about that idea of, I think it was was it June 2022 was a bit of a goal for you. What are some of the, I guess, goals that you're looking to achieve over the next 1 or 2 years, do you think?
Yes, so our goal is that by June 2022, we reach that statement of we develop our own best people. That's a very big statement. And we need to take a few steps back of, well, what does that look like really? So that started with, that's where the core training comes in, is getting people to that foundational stage. And then the other elements are going to play into that as well. So we're looking at things like beefing up our leadership programs. So we currently have a team leader training program, and we also have external people come in and run training for our more senior managers. But we're also looking at things like an emerging leaders program and looking to develop people's specializations, because not everybody will be a people manager, and that's okay. We need people who are fantastic at their jobs who may not have those people skills as well. And it's really important that we're supporting them too. But the next really big thing that we're going to be focusing on, as well as those bits, because that's a reasonable amount in and of itself, is career mapping. So we're going to do a program as part of the yarns. People will be able to sign up for a career roadmap, and that's going to be, we're sort of looking at what that might, we've got a bit of an idea of how it might look at the moment, but I think as part of my uni studies, what that may change, is I'm studying some career counselling stuff. And we're looking to hopefully launch that a little bit later this year. The idea is that people will be able to have a conversation with, they'll be able to do some sort of career counselling brainstorming stuff, and then have a conversation with their managers around, well, what does this look like in practice? What are the skills that we need to work on together, and what sorts of programs will we run you through? Yep.
So some busy times ahead.
Definitely.
I think in a nutshell. And out of interest, with those chats and the yarns that you're having, given that you do have sort of half the work site off site, are you just still having the same volume of conversations but using tools like Zoom or Teams to facilitate those?
Yes, so yeah, that's exactly the same. That's pretty much what we're doing. We did sort of pull back on things like the team leader training right when we went off site. I think we thought that it would be a little bit sooner that we'd all be back on site than it has been, and there's no end in sight to that. So we're now, we're going to restart the team leader training next week, which will obviously look a bit different to, we've only previously run it as a classroom training with everyone in one space. So we're reviewing the content at the moment to work out how that'll look. And knowing that at any one point we might have to do it entirely remotely, as opposed to doing it just via some people in the classroom and some people not. So that's a bit exciting, I guess.
Yep, I think that's definitely the best word. Sometimes it might feel a little bit laugh or cry, but I think exciting. And I guess as well, even from a facilitating point of view, facilitating online versus face to face, or a combination of both, presents its own unique challenges as well. So
Absolutely. I mean, this is going to sound really silly, but they have this really good ball that has little communication phrases on it that people respond to it when they catch it, whatever your thumb lands on.
okay.
Can't even do that can't use that exercise. So there's amazing what you need to rethink when it's online, because you can't really throw a ball around online.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Well, look, thank you so much. It's been really informative for me, and hopefully for all the people that are on the phone. Now, the next sort of where I guess we'll move into is really just into a questions space. As I mentioned, we do have a few questions coming through with regards to around content. John, I don't know if you want me to go through a couple of these questions or...
Yeah, feel free. That's fine.
Yep. Okay, no problem. Just because I think there's a couple in here that sort of just relate to Litmos, and Claire, we've already sort of touched on it a little bit. We've talked a little bit about using the system to design the in-house training. By the sounds of it, with some of the content that you're looking to create, you sort of more found probably using a third-party authoring tool to create SCORM. Is that sort of the way that you'd be going? Yeah. And do you have instructional designers in-house, or is that another hat that you'll potentially put on? Because I know learning to build SCORM can be a bit of a beast if you're quite new to it.
Yes, it is. It's I spend a lot of time Googling things.
Mm-hmm.
So no, we don't have an in-house instructional designer at the moment. I'd love to have one, but no, we don't have one. That's something that I do as part of my role.
Yep, gotcha. And as I mentioned, I think sort of coming up with the Q3 and the Q4 release, no doubt you'll be pretty interested in some of those changes coming with regards to content building, which is
Absolutely.
exciting times. With regards to the leadership development, so we've had a question around sort of those leadership programs that you touched on. Do you rely solely on Glados to do this, or is it more that you manage it outside of Litmos or Glados and just use some elements to deliver the training, or is it sort of wholly and solely the leadership program is in Litmos and all the elements are captured within there?
The majority of our leadership programs are delivered face-to-face, because a lot of it is around strengths-based leadership and looking at, well, what's my role, what's my place within my team, what's my team's place within the organisation, and really looking at it in that way and sort of thinking about that sort of thing and how do I develop my best people. And a lot of that, I think it works better being able to really talk about that. Which is not something that we can really do on Litmos. You can't really have that interaction and bouncing off each other in the same way. But Litmos, we've got things like little employment law refreshers. So you could grab it, before you go to talk to someone. We'd have it's really blended learning, I guess, that we'd have a chat with managers about employment law, and then say, hey, also there's these resources. If you've forgotten, 3 months from now, if you're needing to have a conversation with someone, we've got these resources on Glados that you can have a look at.
Sure. So almost like using, I guess, as a bit of a resource library to facilitate some of those face-to-face conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very good. And we had just a question with regards to the reporting. You mentioned there's a little bit of learning, perhaps some of the reports didn't necessarily focus a lot of attention on that when you were initially scoping. The question was around, are you finding that it's more around a training element that you just need to spend a little bit more time in Litmos, or is there actual data points that you just can't get, or is it a combination of the both? I think just people looking for a bit of context around reports and what might be hindering the ideal outcome.
To be honest, I'm not sure. I think I don't know enough about it to be able to confidently say whether it's something I can do or whether I just don't know if I can do it. But as an example of something that I've really struggled to do is I'm the account owner obviously for the whole organisation. So I can pull data on, I can pull reports on courses that have been accessed in the last month and people, but I haven't yet worked out how to break that down into a team by team or department by department.
Okay.
And that I'd love to be able to do that, because being able to demonstrate to teams whether you know, they're sort of meeting the same standards as everyone else would be really beneficial. And I know the leadership team would love to have that information themselves.
Got you. So a bit of like cross comparison between the teams.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't. I'm not sure.
I'm sounding like maybe this could be a sequel coming with regards to a report session for the group potentially. If we get a few queries about it, that might be something that we can look at hosting as well and doing an active demo in the LMS. Now, another question, really great question came through from Jamie. Have you found any trends with regards to users using Litmos or Glados on a particular device? So, for example, mobile, tablet, desktop, particularly given people are home. Are you seeing any trends in that regard, or are most people consuming it via the computer still?
For us, it's definitely via the computer still, because the majority of staff are completing it while they're on shift. And we don't really do tablets and devices while at work. In fact, when they're out on the floor in any of our call centres, it's not really encouraged to have a phone with you, because well, your attention is on your customer when you're chatting with them. And so it's really, yeah, it's generally desktop based for us.
Yep. Okay, that's very interesting. Oh, we actually just had one was quite curious with regards to, you mentioned you're doing some more training. What was the overall topic of the training that you're doing? You mentioned I forgot the name of the.
So I'm doing a grad cert in career leadership and learning through QUT.
Oh, there you go, career leadership.
So it's just a one semester thing, so I'm actually working 4 days a week while I do that. It's very exciting, but it's studies. It's a lot going back to study, isn't it?
We're literally having the conversation just the other day with a colleague, as far as it's a bit different when you go back to study as opposed to going straight out of high school. Motivations are a little bit different. And for me personally, I've got to read things a couple more times for it to sink in. I took it for granted that I could just read it once previously, and that was enough. But it'll work a bit harder nowadays. Excellent. Okay, so I'll just see if there's any other questions that are coming through. Oh, so we talked a little bit about external authoring tools. So for the group, when I mentioned authoring tools, it's so SCORM, if we just sort of take a step back, SCORM is an e-learning industry standard. So often, for example, our Litmos Hero courses, they're all referred to as SCORM files or SCORM packages. And SCORM just basically means it'll play well on any LMS. So a SCORM package you could upload into Litmos, or if you create a SCORM package, you could upload it pretty much into any LMS that accepts SCORM. An authoring tool allows you to create it, basically. So really common ones could be Storyline, Articulate, or Adobe Captivate. So there could be authoring tools as well. If you're just stepping into that territory, another one could be iSpring. So another sort of, or Lectora, yep. So there's another one, yeah. So often, there's lots out, to be honest, a quick Google, there's lots out there. And often an entry-level area is perhaps if you've, say, got really entry-level, maybe you've got like a PowerPoint and it's got lots of animations and moving pieces, and you don't necessarily want the person to click on any buttons, you just kind of want them to step back and enjoy the show. Potentially you might consider SCORMing that PowerPoint presentation, and you would need an authoring tool to do that. And obviously SCORM opens up lots of flexibility, but it does require a bit of know-how. And yeah, it is a new system basically that you'd have to learn, but it allows you to achieve some pretty cool things.
It does. I made our emergency procedures training. You've got to assemble your emergency survival kit. So you've got to go around and click on bits in the map of the organisation, and you know, get your fire extinguisher. And I had that when you get a part for your you know, when you get the first aid kit, it would flash. I reckon I spent 3 hours trying to make that object flash. And sometimes those little things that you think, I really need this, and they take a little while, but it is worth it.
Yeah, and that's often why, if you stumble across an instructional designer, you can you hang on to them for those that are comfortable in that. So another question that we had come through, you mentioned using the SBS content and the scope disability content. How have you found, say, purchasing content from a third party and uploading into Litmos? Relatively straightforward. So if someone was looking to go to a third party and buy another course, what was that process like for you?
Really easy. So they just share it to me in a zip file, and then you pretty much just upload the entire zip file. I don't even open them. I don't know what's in them. And then it just magically plays in Litmos. It's really easy.
Yep. Excellent. Which is, pretty much my technical definition, that a SCORM package, to look at it, it is just a zip file, and it's a zip file made up of lots of different elements, and basically they all work together to produce this SCORM package, which is just an e-learning course, sort of for more informal language. We did touch on briefly with regards to the idea that you can certainly create your own content in Litmos. So there is a course builder. So for example, it could be upload a document, upload a video. You could use it to manage face-to-face training, or maybe play YouTube videos, those sorts of things. So even if you're not using SCORM or have those sorts of requirements, you can still certainly share a lot of content and push out content via the LMS as well.
And now, even things like we did our work from home safety check for all the staff who are off site through using the course builder.
Yep, excellent. Now, I think we've covered the majority of the questions, and we are sort of coming up to the end of our time. I might just give everyone maybe another minute or so. If there's any questions that I've missed, please feel free to pop them into the chat, or if there's, because I think we've sort of covered a few of the questions just through our general chat, Claire. So one question was with regards to that life skills module that you mentioned, which they thought was a great idea. Was that an e-learning or a face-to-face delivery? I think
so we've only run one of them so far, which was taxes, and that was face-to-face, but it was very popular and asked to be recorded. So we're looking to maybe record the next one and put that up into Litmos from there. As long as the presenter's comfortable to do that, we're happy to do that.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we'll just give everyone a minute or so. And just as we do, I guess just from a personal note, just want to say thanks, Claire, for your time. It's been really informative, and it's been great. I personally haven't actually been involved with one of these sessions before, so it's really good to, I get to peek behind the scenes a little bit. Often with the customers that I deal with, it's sort of only in that sort of first few weeks or so, and every now and then I get to check back in with them, but it's really good to understand sort of what drives a customer like Aussie Broadband to choose Litmos. So it's been really informative.
Thanks for having me, and I hope I can hear from other people's journeys of what you've done with Litmos and things as well.
Excellent. Okay, so I've just had just one final question, and then I'll hand back to John to finish up. With regards to the management support for the life skill programs, were they on board? Did you have any tips with regards to how to sell that to the leadership group?
I don't, to be honest. I'm just really lucky here that people, we sort of see staff as, bring your whole self to work, and that what happens outside of work influences what happens at work. Yep. So I guess we have this sort of holistic view of employment. And so people are just on board with things like life skills programs. So sorry, I can't be much more help with that one.
Nice. Excellent. Work for Aussie. It sounds like it could be helpful too. Okay, well, look, I'll hand back to John now to wrap up the session.
Fantastic. Great, thanks so much, Lisa and Claire. It was great to see so many questions on our Q&A function. Thanks so much for that. So that was Lisa Anderson, Solutions Manager at SAP Litmos, and Claire Morrissey, Learning and Development Officer at Aussie Broadband. We will send everybody who registered a recording of today's audio. Thanks very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your week.